Hey, this is KB. I'm a technologist, thought leader, and self-published author. I've been publishing ebooks, print books, audio, video, and other content online since 2015. I stumbled quite a bit, tried many different types of content, marketing strategies, software tools, and social media streams. Now I'm here to help you learn from my mistakes and find inspiration along the way. We'll take a journey together to leverage your content, dive into practical tips, and test out actionable strategies that move you from posts to profit. This is the Self-Pub Empire Podcast. Welcome back. Really excited to talk about publishing, publishing books once again. Here we go. Going to publish some more and talk about more publishing. This time, though, I want to give you an even more in-depth, behind-the-scenes look or discussion on getting a book out there. And what does this really mean? In this case, I actually have a book that needs to be published. So my very good friend has a book to publish called Peering in the Darkness. This is going to come out on the K-Square imprint. It is a book of fiction, a little dark, which is his specialty, and quite good. The book itself is in manuscript form as we speak, and as I'm talking to you today. And he sent the manuscript over. We've talked about what it's going to look like, some of the things that needs to be done with it. And there pretty much goes through a standard process that I have worked out to get it up on Kindle Direct Publishing. The important point here is using Kindle Direct Publishing to me is critical, because if you can get something published there first, it's much, much more likely that it will match standards across the board on any other platform. So you don't have to use Kindle Direct exclusively, but it's a great place to start because it is the most stringent on making sure the book is formatted correctly and how it prints is high quality and very good looking. So it's always nice to do that. Definitely want to think through those things when you're starting out on your journey for getting your book published out there in the world, to get your masterpiece out there. So great book. It's fiction. He's very good at poetry as well, by the way, my friend. He's a great editor, good friend. And the quick K-Square imprint is really where this is going to go. I talked about imprints in the past in my previous podcast. Go check that one out. And since this is going to happen in that K-Square imprint, there's a little bit of additional work that I'm going to have to do. I'm going to probably take a look at the A+ content later on that I've got out there for K-Square, and certainly with the series functionality in KDP itself, and making sure that that is up and running and successful. So want to make sure we've got that too. So getting started with this whole process of getting a book published, there's actually quite a few steps that I go through. I've broken it down really into 4 things. They are not equal things. They are individually different. There's some really large things in the series of 4 things that I do, and there's some much, much smaller things. All of them are important, though, and I take them, talk about them, and take them to some degree sequentially here, but really there's a fair amount of back and forth if you're not practiced at this. I've done this quite a bit, many, many years, nearly 10 years of publishing, even beforehand when Kindle Amazon bought CreateSpace. CreateSpace was the original print publishing arm, and they had their own Kindle electronic arm. They put it all together as Kindle Direct Publishing. There's long stories about that on the internet. You can find out how that all happened as they moved. And actually, we started out with CreateSpace. So I think that's interesting to note too. That's how long I've been in this game, publishing. So it's K-Square imprint. I've got 4 big pieces that I'm going to cover. So here's the preview. So the overall steps really are, number 1, manuscript formatting. That is obviously a huge critical thing. It can be really, really complicated to make it look good. Number 2, your KDP Bookshelf entry. Again, everything in Kindle Direct Publishing is all based on the bookshelf concept, and that is really your records of your book entries. It includes your Amazon stock number. You can get your free ISBN number as well through Kindle. Another great thing to do is to do that so that you don't have to worry about getting your own ISBN. They will get you one for free. That's a little tip for you, a little preview tip. So manuscript formatting is a huge thing. Kindle direct publishing bookshelf entries is a smaller thing, but just as critical and just as important to check on the details. Number 3, set the details and the interior of that in the bookshelf entry. Why is that separate? Because the bookshelf entry is kind of one thing. The details and the interior is a place you're going to go back to numerous times. It is set up currently in a wizard style format. It will go first to the basic details. That's what you have to fill out. There are things you cannot skip. You go to the second page, that's the interior. There's the interior that you need to get in there. There's things you need to do. You need to set your trim size, those kinds of things. You cannot skip this step. You have to have a cover before you can move to the final thing, which is setting your pricing. So you have to have a bunch of things on the second page of the wizard for the setting the details in the interior in your Kindle bookshelf before you can move into the final thing, which is your distribution and your price. And that's the third page. And you can't get there without going through the first couple pages first. But that means you have to have a fully ready manuscript. You have to have a cover, or you can use the cover creator. We'll talk about that later. And that's where those set details are. I talked about those at a high level in previous podcasts, but we're doing this as we speak with a book live. So, number 4, create that book cover. And really, doing what I do in my process is I actually do, is a preview here, actually do the book cover creator in Kindle just to get past it so I can make sure the interior is good before I move on to creating the book cover in its all of its glory. I do it myself because I like it, and I get the artwork though. I'll do the artwork myself, but I do like the graphic design part of it because I think it's fun, and I like formatting those pieces and getting everything in place and making sure it looks exactly the way I want to, because I'm a little picky when it comes to those kinds of things. Okay, so there you go. Manuscript formatting, getting your bookshelf entry ready, setting your details in your interior, and finalizing that, creating that book cover. And then you go back to 3 and create your price and get it pushed out. So that could be a 5, but really, those are the 4 big steps. So today, let's talk about manuscript formatting. This is going to be a long topic. There's a ton of things you could potentially do here. Hey, I want to tell you about something. Change the topic. I don't know about you, but I like things for free. And I put together a free guide to getting started on Kindle Direct Publishing. This guide is many pages of packed material for free for you to get started and writing your own book and using Kindle Direct Publishing to do it. There's a lot of tips and tricks that I jammed into this document. It's a free ebook, and you can find it on the website, selfpubempire.com/free. All you gotta do is put your email address in there, and we'll get you that free book as soon as we possibly can through the magic of the interwebs. And so I hope you enjoyed the free book. Please give it a try. I think you'll find out, judge for yourself, that it's very useful information. I've been publishing books in Kindle Direct Publishing for many years now, and I think this will help you because I ran all kinds of pitfalls, and maybe I can help you avoid a few, and you can get your book out, your masterpiece, out to the public, out to your fans, and have something there that will be out on Amazon for the ages. And remember, with Kindle Direct Publishing, it's all print on demand, so there's absolutely no inventory needed, and Amazon will basically sell it for you. So go ahead, get out there, selfpubempire.com/free, and check it out. It's the first entry there for the free getting started with Kindle Direct Publishing. I hope you enjoy it. With manuscript formatting, it could take forever to actually talk about. However, I'm going to give you the way I do it. And I have a very specific process, whether I write the manuscript or someone else does, to actually take that and work through it and get that ready to go and come up with a pretty well polished product. I have numerous compliments on how polished the products are that we create when we publish through Kindle Direct, because we're very attention to detail focused. So the way that I do it is using a Word template, really, to start off with. You get that modified, and I can have it reused over and over again. So I've got a modified Word template that I use. That's Microsoft Word as a tool. That's the tool I use to start off with. And that template originally came from Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, and I updated it with margins and other items that I liked. And for me, this book is great for targeting both softcover print books and ebooks in Kindle. And then now, too, with hardcovers as well. Certainly, that interior can be used for a hardcover book. The exterior is a little bit trickier because of the way the hardcovers are printed, but the interior, the hardcovers are pretty much the same. So I start with the Word template that I got off of Kindle. I recommend that you do that as well, and start there so you can use that for pretty much whatever you like for softcover and so on and so forth. So what I think we're going to do now is we're going to start off with the tips I use. So I get the manuscript, I get it in Word. Tip number one, take that Kindle template and really start from there. I mean, that's kind of an obvious tip. I just said it. I use Word. I recommend Word. And it's really not that expensive, in my opinion, per year for a subscription with Microsoft. I get no money for this from Microsoft at all. But, Word is kind of the big daddy when it comes to word processing programs. A yearly subscription isn't outrageously priced, and it'll allow you to use Word, which has all kinds of fonts built in, many, many tools and abilities to format all kinds of different documents, not just, not just Kindle Direct publishing type documents. So this original template going into Word, it is actually formatted in Word. Kindle does have a few that are formatted in other for Mac as well, Mac for Word. They also use the other thing that Mac has, Page, that works as well. So it's well worth it, in my opinion, to get that Word subscription, and it's very powerful, very compatible. Alternatives are out there, certainly for free. You can go with things like LibreOffice, which is free. That's LibreOffice. Again, I don't get any money for talking about LibreOffice. Google Docs can be used too. You can do that. Here's the trick. The tip that you need is you have to make sure that you can export your manuscript when it's ready to a PDF. That is what's important. That PDF format is the important part here because that's what you have to upload into Kindle Direct Publishing. PDF, of course, is portable document format. It's an Adobe company format that they created many, many years ago. They've enhanced it over the years, and that is really, really critical to being able to actually publish because those PDFs give Kindle the exact information it needs to do that. So if you think about it, it's kind of funny. The templates are in Word that you download and use, but yet when you actually are done, you take that manuscript and you create a PDF out of it and upload that back up to their system and say, here, this is the formatted version. So it's interesting because that PDF has specific information that they need to do that publishing. So that tip number one really is take that template, use it, and update it to your heart's content to make that worthwhile. We're going to talk about those things too. So tip number two, use a larger screen computer if possible when you're working on your manuscript, and set Word to view print layout. So there's a print layout button under the view tab. Set it to print layout because that way you're going to see what it's going to look like when it's actually printed as close as possible on the screen. Then you want to set your view to multiple pages. So this is, again, how I work, and it makes it very simple for me to do, particularly 2 pages when you size it the right way. So you got a left page and a right page. This allows you to see the pages opened like a book would be, sort of. You have to remember, though, it's intuitively wrong. It's kind of backwards. You have to remember that the page on the left, you have 2 pages side by side, you have the page on the left, that would be the page that you would see first when you first open your book. So if you're thinking about it from a right-handed book, not publishing in Japan, of course, where they go right to left, but left to right in the United States and most of the rest of the parts of the world, you're actually opening up that book cover, and the page on the left on the Word document on the screen is the first page you're going to see. So it's the page that's flat, not the page that's turned over as you turn the page. That's important for a lot of reasons. And I've found that having multiple pages open like that really helps me with the formatting. Why does it help me with the formatting? Once you get your mind kind of around that, having those multiple pages open lets you ensure that items on pages line up vertically and to some degree give you an idea of how things are going to print on the page. Again, it's backwards, kind of the way you'd see 2 pages like that. It's not the open book. It's a little different, hard to describe here. But my point is that you can see how things line up, like the words. You can see how things line up vertically and a little bit horizontally. You can see how the margins look. The margins are extremely important. And that's actually tip number 3, margins. Margins being really important because the inside of the book has to format correctly so you don't have some of your words cut off or unreadable as they get too close to the spine of the book. So again, if you imagine in your mind's eye opening up a book and looking at the text, let's just say a fantasy book or just a novel, open that book up in your mind. And if it's in the middle of the book, you're in the middle of the book, you open it up, you got a page on the right, page on the left, in the middle of the book in that spine area, it's very, very hard to read if that text is very close to that middle part. There's a curvature of the book, of course. You can break the spine if you're really trying to open the book up so that you can read it. So you want those margins to be set correctly so that the text of the book flows to the outside of the page, towards the outside of the page. So I never have even margins. I never, ever, ever have even margins. I always have the inside of the book to be a wider margin, so there's more white space, which keeps your text away from the spine, and the outside margin to be a little narrower so that you have that text closer to the outer edge. Not all the way, but close to the outer edge, so you've got some white space, of course, on the outside. That actually makes the book look more even rather than having exactly the same margins on all pages. I know that sounds really weird, but it's true unless you have certain hardcover books have a different kind of binding where you can open it up and it doesn't matter so much. But paperbacks, generally speaking, you want to have that text towards the outside. So I never, ever, ever have equal margins. I always have more margin on the interior away from the spine and less margin in the exterior so that the text goes out a little further and you can keep it more readable. You have to watch out, though, for tip number 4, margins again. This is margins redux. However, the caution concept here is that you have to be aware of bleed. Bleed is a concept where printed material gets trimmed off and because it extends out, and you have some of that text. If it's way out to the edge, you're going to have things cut off. And this is more important, certainly, regarding bleed with images and things like that. So if you're really good at using bleed appropriately, you can have really cool images that span the entire page from left to right and go right up to the edge. And that way you can have a really cool image that works artistically very well. When it comes to text, though, you really don't want that trimmed off. You want to keep your text readable. So you have to be careful about what that margin looks like, because bleed will tell you in the system, and certainly on KDP, where things are going to get trimmed off. And there's some really cool guidelines and things in Kindle off the help files, I should say, there to actually tell you what it is that you need to do and understand. I recommend you read about bleed and trim sizes and what that means when you're actually uploading your book, if you're doing something complicated. So make sure you pay attention to that. And this is a really important piece. The important part is that you take a look at it and you make sure you know how much margin you need, and that you want to keep things inside those bleed lines if it's just text. You can always adjust, and that's why I use this process where I was talking before about uploading your manuscript and making sure that you can look at it and try it out so you can see where everything lands. All right, that was tip number 4. Tip number 5 is section breaks in Word. I struggle with section breaks, yet I love section breaks in Word. They work fantastically. You can change nearly any formatting item within a specific section in the document. Like you can change the page orientation, portrait versus landscape. I don't recommend that for Kindle Direct Publishing, but it's something you can do. You can change fonts, you can change headers, you can change footers, and particularly you can change page numbering. I like to use it for page numbering mostly. Before the table of contents, for example, in books that I have, we like to use Roman numeral page numbering to show that we aren't actually in the general main content of the book. And then after the table of contents, we use regular numbered margining. So you have a Roman numeral numbering within the margins on those sections, and then regular numbers after that point. Really, really handy. Looks very slick, very professional, and you can change your headers and footers in each of these sections however you like, so that it's not homogeneous throughout the whole thing. It's definitely different than, and again, more polished. The polish of professionalism is in the details. So that's tip number 5. I guess I hadn't really said this ahead of time, but I have 10 tips here just for part 1 of uploading the manuscript. So I'm going to keep going. Tip number 6, automatic tables of contents. Well, this powerful tool in Word, it's a huge time saver, just plain and simple. I believe that most other products out there have tables of contents as well. It's really a must-have. You can set up your text correctly. If you can do that the right way, of course, that's important. Then you're going to come out with a huge time saver. Generally, fonts that are set to a header format or header style in the style sheet piece of Word are picked up by the table of contents. So the great thing about it is that the changes to pages or moving things around can automatically go into the table of contents with a button press. And if your table of contents happen to grow, if it grows bigger because you've added more headers, you can change those number pages with one push of a button and updates everything so everything fits nicely. It can be a little finicky sometimes, but it's really important to note that, like, if the table of contents extends and adds a page to your book because it's really long, you have a lot of headers, it'll actually update all of the page numbering and all the page numbers in the table of contents. Everything kind of flows and it all comes together. It's very slick. You don't have to do anything crazy to get those to work. It can be a little finicky, but generally speaking, it works really, really well. And I think it's a huge time saver. Sometimes I've gotten angry with it in the past, but if I set it up correctly to start off with, I feel really good about it and it works great. You can format them in a number of different ways as well. They have a number of built-in options and you can kind of set it up the way you like. So table of contents, number 6, automatic table of contents, great tip to try to use in the workflow. Definitely something I use in my workflow. Number 7, automatic page counting and automatic word counting. This is a little more of informational pieces that can come to you for Word. That there's page counting because it's kind of slick. It can tell you how big that book will be. That's usually happens. It's like in the lower portion of the screen of Word, gives you what you're looking for there. Why is that important? It's important because it helps you size your book for your cover formatting template. And this is something I'm going to cover in a later podcast. This is how I work. When I want a book, you don't really know. When I create a book with a cover, you don't necessarily know how big that spine is going to be, so you know exactly the number of pages that book is going to be. And if you have it formatted correctly in the right trim size, the right page within your book, and you can then get your appropriate template with the right size, page numbering will help you tremendously because you can say, oh, my book is this many pages, and it will size that for you with a spine. I love having a spine. I love making sure that there's words on the spine because that definitely adds to the professionalism of the book. So page size, automatic page counting, page sizing, automatic page counting, word counting, really, really helpful extra functionality that you're going to get. All right. Tip number 8, page size. So 8, also known as trim size. The templates on KDP can help you with this, but you can set your own, of course. And I touched on this briefly previously as well in the podcast. You really need to match the sizes that you want with what you put in the Kindle, a KDP Bookshelf, when you set that on the second page of that wizard. It's really important to make sure that it all matches correctly in English units or metric units, either way. And if you don't, nothing will look right otherwise. So a very brief tip there, but make sure your trim size matches everything that you're going to set in your bookshelf KDP. So that's really important. Tip number 9, font type. You want to pick a font that's easy to read, but not the default font for Word or whatever tool that you're using. Why do I say this? Easy to read fonts on a computer screen generally don't have serifs, but that's important for you to read for yourself. They actually read better a little bit on the page. There's not a ton of scientific evidence showing that that's the case, but smaller print with that and font size without serifs generally are a little cleaner with good spacing and are a little bit easier to read. Well, getting rid of serifs is really handy for reading on the screen. Serifs don't render well on computer screens just in general. So that actually is the truth that's out there that have seen. There's been research on that. But this doesn't matter too much because KDP uses fonts for its ebook readers of their own most of the time. But generally speaking, either way, you want to pick a font type that's easy to read and really not the default. Stay away from Times New Roman. Stay away from some of these other default ones. Find a good font that works for you and make it your own and use it consistently. That's something you want to try to do so that your books generally look the same across the board. So font type is really important. Font size is just as important. Usually 12, 13, or 14 point pretty much is the going sizing for most fonts of that, for most fonts for books. So font type, font size, very important. Tip number 10, images. Okay, so this is a huge topic if you're doing something fancy with a lot of images in it. It could probably have its own podcast by itself, but let me state a few things here. Putting artwork into a book can be very time consuming, but it can be really rewarding with a nice polished book with this image and or artwork or whatever it is on the interior of the book. Keep in mind, printing costs for color pages are pretty pricey, whereas black and white is really much less. I recommend adjusting your images to grayscale, though, before you upload so that KDP does not try to do this for you if you're going to use just a black and white interior. If you're using colored interior, obviously don't do that. But for black and white interiors, turn those images into grayscale first before you create your PDF to upload and send up to KDP. If you have some graphical design skills, hey, go ahead, knock yourself out, get that cool artwork in the book. Most fantasy novels I've seen, like the Lit RGP stuff that I talked about in my previous podcast, don't really have artwork inside other than some nice scroll work around the text for different chapters and things like that. So that really isn't always the case, is having a lot of artwork. And obviously you don't have to for whatever it is you're doing. So the book that we're working on is called Peering in the Darkness. It has no internal artwork. All the artwork is really just on the cover. That isn't the case, though, for all books in K-Square. There's actually a lot of artwork-related books in the K-Square imprint, and the graphic design work on that can be rather lengthy and takes time to make sure that everything sits out there. In the other grouping of books, the Senior Dummies series, there's a ton of graphics inside those books because they're made with very large print and very large images for seniors to be able to follow along with step-by-step instructions on what to do with their tablets or iPads or Android phones and things like that. And so that was on purpose, and those are very large pieces of graphics, and they come out actually pretty crisp depending on where they're printed, I think, generally speaking. But almost all the printing in Kindle I've seen has been very crisp and very good with very few mistakes from the printing process itself. So images, it's a big topic. Just be careful. Make sure you don't, or pay attention to, I should say, the bleed and how that gets trimmed. So keep that in mind. The system will flag your images if they're like supposed to be, in the bleed so that they go all the way to the edge, but then don't. It'll flag that and say that that's not right. So that's all about images. So those are the top 10 tips for formatting your manuscript in my process, the way I do it. Let me add two real quick bonuses. Number one extra bonus is using the editor in Word. So Microsoft has really pushed a ton of things relative to AI, and there's really great tooling available in Word for free. The editor part is really handy, and you can really go into the review section of Word and have it take a look at what you're doing. How's your spelling? How's your grammar? what level of grade level do you need to read this? So really, really brief. I could talk about the editor quite a bit. The other one that I really love to use, bonus tip, is read aloud. That is fantastic. It works great. You pick a voice, you set a spot, and you have it read your book to you. If it doesn't sound right, you're going to be able to fix some problems before it would even go to any editing, or if you are going to hire an editor, you can actually hear the problem. So one of the things in the human mind is hearing that read back to you. You're going to pick up things that you're going to want to maybe fix. It's a lot faster than trying to proof, not faster. It's a lot more accurate than trying to proofread it visually yourself because someone else is reading it to you and you have the computer read it to you. That's a pretty slick piece of technology that is in Microsoft Word. Again, not saying you have to use Microsoft Word. And again, I don't get any payment for saying anything about Microsoft Word, but that's a tool that I use in my process. All right, so we covered a lot of ground today. There's a lot of material here, and I'm only just getting started, scratching the surface as I'm going through creating Peering in the Darkness with the K-Square imprint, Kindle Direct Publishing, going to make it a print version and an ebook version. Going to have both of those versions, and I might even look at hardcover and see what kind of extra pieces there are. I've actually done a hardcover in the past. They are expensive to make and print, but they are interesting because, hey, it's a hardcover. They're kind of cool. So I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast. This is only part one. Prepare yourself for part two. We're going to dive further into these tips, my workflow, and how I get something printed, manuscript created, and put into Kindle Direct Publishing. Until then, I hope this has helped you at least move a little bit more toward posts to profits. Thanks for listening.
Hey, congratulations. You just listened to another episode of the Self-Pub Empire podcast. I really hope you found something inspiring, useful, and actionable for your own entrepreneurial and business aspirations. Let's keep connecting as solopreneurs, authors, and online creators of all kinds. For more information, how-tos, great tools, and show notes for the show, head over to selfpubempire.com/podcast. Until next time, let's continue moving from posts to profit.